They say that even the strongest foundations can crumble when you aren't looking. That trust, no matter how solid it seems, can be washed away like footprints on sand. If you're watching this, maybe you already know that truth. Or maybe you're about to learn it, just as I did. If this story resonates with you, please share it to help us grow the Whispered Truths channel. Sometimes the stories that hurt the most to tell are the ones that need to be heard the most. 12 years. That's how long Olivia and I were married before I discovered that the woman I went to bed with every night was a stranger. 12 years of memories that I now question, wondering if anything was ever real. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. Olivia and I met during our junior year of college. I was the awkward computer science major who rarely left the lab, and she was the vibrant marketing student who somehow saw something in me worth loving. Our first date was at a 24-hour diner at 3 in the morning, because that was the only time I could take a break from coding a project. Instead of being annoyed, she brought her textbooks and studied across from me, occasionally stealing my fries and making me laugh despite my stress. After graduation, we moved into a tiny apartment together. While I was building my software company from scratch, Olivia took a job at a marketing firm to keep us afloat. Those early days were hard. We ate a lot of ramen, argued about money, and sometimes went weeks without a proper date. But every night, no matter how exhausted we were, we'd lie in bed and talk about our dreams. The house we'd buy someday. The family we might start. The places we'd travel once my company took off. And then, against all odds, it did take off. An investment banking firm picked up the security software I'd designed, and suddenly we had more contracts than I could handle alone. I brought on my college roommate, Carter, as my business partner. He had the business sense and charisma that I lacked, and together we built something remarkable. When I think back on it now, I wonder if bringing him into our lives was where everything began to unravel, though I couldn't have known it then. Within 5 years, we were able to buy our dream house in the suburbs, a beautiful colonial with a wraparound porch and enough space for the children we planned to have someday. Olivia left her full-time job to focus on consulting part-time, which gave her the flexibility she wanted. On our 10-year anniversary, I surprised her with a vow renewal in Bali. Standing on that beach, her hands in mine as the sun set behind us, I truly believed we had the kind of love that would last forever. But success has a price. As the company grew, so did my responsibilities. 60-hour work weeks became the norm. I'd come home late to find Olivia already asleep, the dinner she'd made cold in the refrigerator with a little note that said, "Missed you tonight." I'd kiss her forehead and promise myself that I'd make more time, that I'd restore the balance. And sometimes I did, weekend getaways, surprise lunch dates, movie nights at home. But they became islands in a sea of absence, not the foundation they should have been. I started noticing changes in Olivia about 2 years ago. Small things at first. She became more protective of her phone, angling it away when I'd walk into the room. She began taking more care with her appearance, buying new clothes and changing her hairstyle. At the time, I was flattered, thinking she was making an effort for me. When I'd come to bed late, I'd sometimes catch her quickly closing her laptop, claiming she was just browsing social media. If I asked about her day, her answers became increasingly vague. "Just the usual," she'd say, "nothing exciting." But when I'd press for details, she'd change the subject or ask about my day instead. I dismissed these warning signs, convincing myself she was just going through a phase or that she needed her privacy. Maybe she was bored with our routine. Maybe she resented my long hours. I promised myself I'd try harder, be more present, reignite the spark between us. Our 12th anniversary fell on a Tuesday. I'd been pulling all-nighters for weeks to finish a major project, but I was determined to make this day special. I left work early, stopped by her favorite florist for a bouquet of white roses and peonies, and picked up a small blue box from Tiffany's containing the diamond earrings she'd been eyeing. I planned to take her to the restaurant, where we'd had our first real date after college graduation, then maybe a walk along the waterfront, where we used to dream about our future. When I pulled into our driveway at 5:30 p.m., I was surprised to find Olivia's car missing. I checked my phone, thinking I might have missed a text about her plans, but there was nothing. I called her, but it went straight to voicemail. Strange, I thought, but not alarming. Maybe she was picking up something for dinner, or perhaps she'd gone to get her hair done as a surprise for our anniversary. I decided to use the time to wrap her gift. I needed nice paper, which Olivia kept in her home office. As I rummaged through her desk drawers, I accidentally bumped her laptop, waking it from sleep mode. I didn't mean to look. I've always respected her privacy, but the screen illuminated with an open chat window that caught my eye. It was a group called Midnight Club, and what I saw froze the blood in my veins. Explicit messages, photos of my wife that no one else should ever see. Conversations with men and some women, arranging meetups, detailed descriptions of encounters. My hands began to shake as I scrolled up, unable to stop myself. Each message another dagger in my heart. The most devastating part wasn't the explicit photos or the messages planning meetups. It was seeing Olivia describe our marriage as empty and loveless to complete strangers. How could the woman who kissed me goodbye that morning be the same person who wrote these words? The woman who still held my hand during movies, who still left little notes in my lunch, who still whispered, "I love you," before falling asleep. How could she tell these people that our marriage was nothing more than a convenient facade? I felt physically ill, my body rejecting the reality in front of me, but I couldn't stop reading. I kept scrolling, desperate to understand the scope of her deception, to find some explanation that might hurt less than the obvious truth. And then I saw a name that made my heart stop completely. Carter. Carter Wilson. My best friend since college. My business partner. The man who stood beside me at my wedding, who helped me build my company from nothing, who had dinner at our home at least once a month. The man I trusted with everything. Their messages were different from the others, more intimate, more personal. They weren't just arranging hookups, they were having an affair. A real emotional affair that had been going on for months. Every business trip they took together, every late night at the office they claimed to be working, they were meeting up. Hotel receipts, inside jokes, intimate details about their encounters filled the chat. Next time Ethan has that conference in Seattle, let's meet at our usual place, Carter had written just 3 days ago. I can't stop thinking about last time. I'll tell him I'm visiting my sister that weekend, Olivia had replied. He never checks anyway. I sat there, unable to move, as my entire world collapsed around me. The two people I trusted most had betrayed me in the worst possible way imaginable. Every memory was now tainted. All those dinners where they sat across from each other at our table, all those company parties where they danced innocently, all those times I'd asked Carter to check on Olivia when I was traveling. How long had they been laughing at me behind my back? Have you ever experienced that moment when your entire reality shatters? When someone you would have trusted with your life betrays you completely? Share your story in the comments. Sometimes knowing we're not alone is the only thing that helps us survive the unbearable. I don't know how long I sat there, numb with shock and grief. The sound of Olivia's car pulling into the driveway finally snapped me out of my trance. I closed the laptop, my mind racing. Should I confront her immediately? Should I pretend I knew nothing while gathering more evidence? Should I call Carter? I felt disoriented, like I was moving through a nightmare I couldn't wake from. When Olivia walked through the door, her face lit up with a smile that now seemed like the cruelest lie. She was carrying a small gift bag and wearing a new dress I'd never seen before. For a split second, I almost convinced myself I'd imagined everything I'd just seen. "You're home early," she exclaimed, coming toward me for a kiss. I stepped back, unable to bear her touch. Her smile faltered. "Ethan? What's wrong? Who are they?" My voice sounded strange, even to my own ears, hollow and distant. "Who are who?" She set down her purse, confusion crossing her features. "The Midnight Club, Olivia. All those men. And Carter." The name stuck in my throat like a shard of glass. I saw everything. The color drained from her face. For a moment, she said nothing, her eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. Then her shoulders slumped, and she sank into a chair. "It's not what you think," she began, but I cut her off with a bitter laugh. Don't, don't insult me by lying more. I saw the messages. I saw the pictures. I saw what you wrote about our marriage. Tears welled in her eyes. I was lonely, Ethan. You're never here. Even when you are physically present, your mind is always at work. Do you know how many dinners I've eaten alone in the past year? How many times I've gone to bed without even a goodnight kiss? So this is my fault? I asked incredulously. I've been building our future, Olivia. Everything I've done has been for us. No, she said quietly. It's been for you, your company, your dream. I just got swept along. We argued for hours. She broke down, claiming the midnight club had started as harmless fun when she felt lonely during my busy work periods. Just flirtatious messages at first, she said, never meaning to take it further. But then one virtual conversation led to another, and another, until she was deep in a world of digital affairs. And Carter? I finally asked, the name still burning my tongue. Her face changed then, softening in a way that hurt more than her anger. That was different, she admitted. Carter understood me. He listened. He was there. He was my best friend, I said, my voice breaking. You were my wife. You were supposed to talk to me if you were unhappy. I tried, she cried. For years, Ethan. But you didn't hear me. You just worked harder, thinking that another bonus or promotion would fix everything. Part of me wanted to storm out, to call a lawyer immediately and end everything. But 12 years isn't erased in a moment, no matter how devastating the betrayal. When Olivia begged for another chance, swearing the affair with Carter was a mistake, and that she would end all contact with the Midnight Club, something in me couldn't completely let go. Against my better judgment and the advice of my sister, who urged me to leave immediately, I agreed to try couples counseling. I moved into our guest room, unable to sleep beside Olivia but not quite ready to give up on everything we'd built. For a few weeks it seemed like we might find our way back. Olivia deleted her social media accounts, gave me her passwords, and seemed genuinely committed to rebuilding trust. We had intense, painful sessions with our therapist, where we both cried and shouted and finally said things we'd been holding back for years. I even began to understand, in some small way, how my emotional absence had created space for her to seek connection elsewhere. Not that it excused her actions, nothing could, but I wasn't blameless in the breakdown of our marriage. I had prioritized success over intimacy, achievement over connection. We both had work to do if we wanted to heal. As for Carter, I couldn't bring myself to speak to him. I sent a terse email, removing him from day-to-day operations at the company, citing personal reasons and legal constraints that prevented me from saying more. He called repeatedly, but I let every call go to voicemail. Olivia swore she had ended things with him completely. For exactly 17 days, I believed we might survive this. Then, while Olivia was showering, her phone lit up with a notification. I shouldn't have looked. I knew that. But trust once broken is not easily restored. It was a message from an account I didn't recognize. Missing you tonight. Our hotel isn't the same without you. With shaking hands, I checked her call history and found dozens of calls to and from a number saved under Work Client J. I wasn't surprised when I dialed it from my phone and heard Carter's voicemail greeting. They hadn't ended things at all. They'd just gotten better at hiding them. The betrayal cut even deeper the second time. When I confronted Olivia with this evidence, her denial crumbled quickly. She admitted they'd been meeting in secret, unable to break the emotional connection despite her promises to me. I do love you, Ethan, she said, tears streaming down her face. But I'm in love with him. I didn't mean for it to happen. Those words broke something in me that I'm still not sure has fully healed. I packed a bag that night and checked into a hotel. The next morning, I called a divorce attorney. The weeks that followed were the darkest of my life. I stopped sleeping more than 2 or 3 hours at a stretch. Food lost all taste. I lost 20 pounds in just over a month. Work, which had always been my refuge, became impossible to focus on. I'd stare at my computer screen for hours, unable to write a single line of code. Clients began to notice the decline in quality and responsiveness. Some even followed Carter when he left to start his own firm. Most devastating was how I began to question every memory of our 12 years together. Was anything real? That night in Bali when we renewed our vows, was she already involved with someone else? The Christmas when she gave me that handwritten book of reasons she loved me, was it all a performance? Had she always been unfaithful? Or was I blind not to see the moment she began to slip away? I obsessed over these questions, torturing myself with scenarios I couldn't prove or disprove. I began having panic attacks, something I'd never experienced before. The first one hit while I was in a client meeting. Suddenly I couldn't breathe, my heart raced, and I was convinced I was dying. I excused myself and spent 20 minutes in a bathroom stall, gasping for air and trying to remember who I was before everything fell apart. My company, which I'd built from nothing, began to suffer. Without Carter's business connections and with my increasing inability to function, we lost several major clients. I had to lay off staff I'd personally hired and mentored. Each termination meeting felt like another failure, another piece of my life crumbling because of their betrayal. I found myself sitting in my car outside Carter's apartment at 3 a.m., shaking with rage, wondering if confronting him would somehow restore my shattered sense of self. That's when I realized I was becoming someone I didn't recognize, and that terrified me more than anything Olivia had done. I drove away that night and checked myself into therapy the next day. The divorce process was messier than I could have imagined. Despite our prenuptial agreement, Olivia tried claiming half my company, arguing she had supported me during its formation. When that failed, she told our mutual friends I had been emotionally absent, practically forcing her to look elsewhere for connection. Some friends actually believed her, taking her side and cutting me out of their lives. Carter left the company officially, taking several key clients with him. The business I had poured my heart and soul into for a decade was now struggling to survive. Within 6 months of discovering Olivia's betrayal, I had lost my marriage, my best friend, and watched my company falter. I felt like a failure on every possible level. If you've had to rebuild your life after betrayal, drop a heart in the comments. Sometimes the simplest gestures remind us we're part of a community that understands our pain without needing words. Rock bottom arrived on what would have been our 13th anniversary. I found myself alone in an apartment I hated, surrounded by unpacked boxes, staring at a bottle of whiskey and wondering if the pain would ever stop. I didn't drink that night, though I wanted to. Instead, I called my sister, who drove 3 hours to sit with me. She didn't offer platitudes or assurances that everything would be okay. She just stayed, bearing witness to my grief, reminding me with her presence that I wasn't completely alone. That night marked a turning point. Not because the pain lessened, it didn't, not yet, but because I made a decision. I would not let Olivia and Carter's actions determine the rest of my life. I would not surrender my company, my self-respect, or my capacity for joy because of their betrayal. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be quick, but I would find my way back to myself. I committed to therapy twice a week. I forced myself to eat properly and exercise, even when it felt pointless. I reconnected with old friends who had nothing to do with Olivia or Carter. I hired a talented young programmer who brought fresh energy to the company, and together we rebuilt our client base, focusing on smaller but more stable accounts. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, things began to change. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I realized I had gone a whole day without thinking about Olivia. 2 months later, I laughed genuinely at a friend's joke and felt no guilt afterward. Small victories, but significant ones. The company stabilized, though it remained smaller than before. In many ways, I preferred it this way. I had more control, more connection with my team, more involvement in the actual work instead of just the business side. I found joy in coding again, in solving problems and creating solutions. A year after the divorce finalized, I received an unexpected email from Olivia. She wanted to meet for coffee, to talk. My first instinct was to ignore it, to protect the fragile peace I had built. But my therapist encouraged me to consider it, suggesting that closure might help me move forward more completely. We met at a neutral coffee shop, not one of our old haunts. She looked different. Her hair was shorter, and she seemed thinner, more subdued. We exchanged awkward pleasantries about the weather, about mutual acquaintances we still shared. Then she got to the point. "I owe you an apology," she said, her eyes fixed on her untouched latte. "A real one, not the manipulative ones I gave when we were trying to save our marriage." She told me that her relationship with Carter had imploded shortly after our divorce. He had cheated on her with someone younger, someone at his new company. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "I destroyed our marriage for something that wasn't real," she admitted. "I told myself Carter and I had this deep connection, this perfect understanding. But it was just another fantasy, like the Midnight Club. It was all about escaping reality, avoiding the hard work of real intimacy." I sat there, listening, feeling strangely detached from the pain these revelations would have caused me a year earlier. I didn't feel vindicated or pleased by her suffering. I just felt sad for both of us, for the waste of so much love and potential. "Why are you telling me this?" I finally asked. "Because you deserve the truth," she said. "And because I need to say out loud that I know what I lost. You were a good husband, Ethan. Imperfect, yes. Obsessed with work, yes. But you were honest and loyal, and you loved me genuinely. I threw that away for something that wasn't even real, and I'll regret that forever." I didn't say I forgave her. I'm not sure I ever fully will. But I thanked her for her honesty, and I meant it. As I walked away from that coffee shop, I realized I no longer carried the crushing weight of betrayal on my shoulders. The pain hadn't disappeared completely. I suspect some echo of it will always remain, but it no longer defined me. It's been 2 years since discovering Olivia's digital double life. I won't pretend the journey has been easy or linear. There are still days when doubt creeps in, when I question my judgment and my worth. But those days grow fewer as time passes. I've started dating again, cautiously. I'm more vigilant now, more aware of red flags, but I'm determined not to let suspicion poison my capacity for trust. That would be giving Olivia and Carter too much power over my future. My company is thriving in its new, more focused form. I've found a balance between work and personal life that I never achieved during my marriage. I've reconnected with old hobbies, hiking, playing guitar, stargazing, that got lost in the hustle of building a business. Most importantly, I've learned that survival isn't just about enduring pain. It's about growing through it. The betrayal nearly destroyed me, but rebuilding forced me to examine who I really am, what I truly value, and how I want to live the rest of my life. If you're in that dark place now, wondering if you'll ever feel whole again after someone has shattered your trust, I want you to know that it is possible. Not easy, not quick, but possible. The person who emerges from that crucible of pain won't be the same person who entered it. They'll be stronger, wiser, more compassionate, and more authentic. They'll be you, but a version of you that knows both the depths of heartbreak and the heights of recovery. Trust again, love again, live again. But do it with your eyes wide open, and with the wisdom that only comes from surviving the unimaginable. Thank you for listening to my story. If it helped you feel less alone in your own journey through betrayal and recovery, please subscribe to Whispered Truths. Sometimes our most painful stories become the light that guides someone else through their darkest hour.